Welcome, everybody. I think there will be more people joining us and they can just pick up as we go along. I'm Elizabeth Brown. I'm Vice President of the League of Women Voters of the Cincinnati area. And I want to welcome you all here this evening. The League is a membership organization with over 100 years history. Many of you know us as for our nonpartisan voter education and advocacy over voting rights and election system issues. This evening's presentation, the purpose of tonight's program is to educate ourselves and the community on who we are. How is the Cincinnati metro area changing? Good policy decisions require accurate information. We can't just rely on reputations that often are decades old. We think we know about what's going on, but we don't always know. So we need to look at the accurate information. Many of us were involved with the census back in 2020, and we're anxious to hear on some of the results of it. A couple reminders before I introduce our speaker from the census. We are recording, as you heard, we are recording tonight's session, and we're going to post it on the League's YouTube channel. So if you like what you hear tonight, you think it's useful and want to refer other people, they can be referred to they can find it on the YouTube channel. Please keep yourself muted. We're expecting a fairly large number of people tonight. And so to avoid background noise, if you just would stay on mute and let our speaker go ahead. We'll put your questions into the chat as we go along. There'll be time for questions when he's done with the presentation. And we can pull some out of chat, and we'll probably have some time for you to ask some live questions also. But do it as you think of them as we go along. It's a good way to use the chat function. So let me just introduce then our speaker from the census. Timothy Sarko has been employed with the U.S. Census Bureau for over 25 years now. He's currently what is called a data dissemination specialist. That is quite some title. He's responsible for program planning, coordination, and implementation of data dissemination and outreach for the Census Bureau. He works out of the Cleveland office and actually does outreach and helping people understand the census data through a several state area, including all of Ohio. So he is going to talk to us tonight about the Cincinnati region and what we're looking about like and what the census has to say about it. He's also going to be available, he said, to answer questions. I've had several people tell me they've tried to go on the census website and pull information, and it's a little overwhelming sometimes unless you're a real specialist. And he's available to help folks work through that if they have specific questions. So Tim, I'm just going to turn it over to you if you want to unmute yourself and go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Let me just share my screen. Hopefully you can all see that.
Looks good.
Okay. As you said, I'm going to use census data to show how Cincinnati, the region, has changed over the past decade, basically. And my outline is very small, very short. I'm just going to talk about the 2020 census data products, what is out currently, and because a lot of it, the bulk of the 2020 census data is not out yet. We just have basically the apportionment files and the redistricting files. And there's a limited amount of data in the redistricting files. So I'm going to talk about the 2020 census as it relates to the Cincinnati region. And then I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the American Community Survey, our largest survey, and show you some of those estimates as they relate to the Cincinnati region. And then I'll take any kind of questions you may have. So first off, we have the decennial census, and you just get basic data from the decennial census. It was like basically 10 questions, took a very short time to complete the census. And basically you get age, sex, relationship, race, Hispanic origin, the number of people living in a housing unit, and tenure. Everybody knows it's done every 10 years. It's 100% complete data. It reflects a point in time, which is April 1st, 2020. And you can get this data all the way down to the census block level. And it establishes the official count. So that's what I'm going to talk about first, is what the decennial census, what limited amount of data that we have so far from the decennial census tells us about the Cincinnati region. So population-wise, from here I have 2010 census, 2020 census, the numeric change and the percent change for Ohio, Hamilton County, Cincinnati, and the Cincinnati Metro. You can see that Ohio has increased by 2.3% of its population from the 2010 census. Hamilton increased 3.5%. Cincinnati actually increased 4.2%. And the metro area increased the most at 5.9% of its population from 2010. This is just the population, same thing, but this is the population 18 years and over for 2010 to 2020 census and the change. You can see Ohio increased 4.6% in 18 and over. Hamilton County increased 5.4% of its population 18 and over, and Cincinnati increased 6% of its population 18 and over. I didn't include the metro area in this specific one because the metro area, after every census, the metro area may change based on the census. Here I have Cincinnati neighborhood population from the 2010 and 2020 census. And I've ranked them according to the percent change. So you could see, for example, Queensgate had the largest percent change from the 2010 census at 61.3%. And it didn't really, it only started with 142 people. You could look down and see the other neighborhoods as well. And if you look at the other end, you can see that, I'm not sure I'm saying this right, Sadamsville is, it lost over 30% of its population. So you can see all in the red have lost, that's where they're losing populations in the neighborhoods. And actually I made a map on the right so you could actually see the green is where there's population increase and the pink is where there's population decrease from the 2010 census. And my intent was to see if there was any kind of relationship or order of where these neighborhoods were that were showing an increase or decrease. It does seem kind of very loosely, you can see that the central neighborhoods lost population down to the more southern ones, basically. Here we have race and ethnicity for Hamilton County and Cincinnati from the 2010 and 2020 census. If you look at Hamilton County, you can see the white alone population decreased by 4.8%. And you can see the white alone population actually slightly increased at 0.7% in Cincinnati. And the Black African-American population increased by 1.6 in Hamilton, whereas in Cincinnati, it decreased by 5.7%. And then you see American Indian, Alaska Native, both increases in the county and the city of Cincinnati. We see pretty sizable increases in the Asian population in both Hamilton County and Cincinnati, nearing 50%. Then you got the Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders. We show a 37.5% decrease, but there wasn't that many to begin with. And then if you note, and you see this all over when I do this, the sum of the race alone and two or more races, you see those large increases. That is because the 2020 census made it easier to for people to self-identify with race. So you see these large gains in some other race in 2 or more races. And actually they do tell you to compare with caution to some other race in 2 or more races because of the way the race question was asked on the 2020 census. And you see the large gains in the Hispanic and Latino in Hamilton, 75.9% increase. And then we saw a very high increase in Cincinnati in the Hispanic Latino at 90.6%. Here I'm showing the diversity index. And what the diversity index is, it's the probability that 2 people chosen at random will be from different race and ethnicity groups. So these are the 2020 diversity index by county. And you can see Ohio had a diversity index of 40.4. And you could see how the counties ranked in diversity index. And you note here that most of these 6 counties that are top with the diversity index are where the bigger cities are in Ohio. Hamilton County actually had a 47.7 diversity index in 2010, and it increased to 54.1% in 2020. So we see Hamilton County, according to the census, getting more diverse. Now I just wanted to show you some of the census data products that are yet to be released. And what I just showed you was the redistricting file. It's basically 5 or 6 tables of data. But what's coming out is a demographic and housing characteristics file in May. And that'll give you the 5-year age groups, sex, race, Hispanic origin, household type, relationship to the householder, group quarters population, housing occupancy, and tenure. There'll also be a demographic profile coming out in May. That'll include the congressional districts as well of the 116 Congress. And then in August, you'll get a detailed demographic and housing characteristics file, and that'll contain the 370 detailed racial and ethnic groups and 1,200 American Indian and Alaska Native tribe and village population groups. Now that was the decennial census and what we have out so far. So now I would like to switch gears and talk about the American Community Survey, our largest survey. It's the nation's most current, reliable, and accessible data source for local statistics on critical planning topics such as age, children, veterans, commuting, education, income, and employment. It does survey over 3.5 million addresses per year, and it's responsible for over 675 federal government spending each year. It covers over 40 topics, supports over 300 evidence-based federal government uses, and it produces 11 billion estimates each year. It's released as 1-year estimates, those are for large populations, and 5-year estimates for small populations each year. Just to give you some background of what the American Community Survey is, from our first census in 1790 until 1930, we sent 1 form to all households. So starting in 1940, we started sending the short form and the long form. I believe it was 1 in 6 households will get the long form. So in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, we started the ACS, the American Community Survey. It was in a demonstration period. We only had it in so many cities across the United States. And then in 2005, it was full go with the ACS. We started producing annual estimates for all geographies. So as you know, the 2010 census was a short form only, and as was the 2020 census. This just shows you the American Community Survey, the differences between it and the census. The American Community Survey produces sample estimates, whereas the census produces official counts. The ACS collects detailed social, economic, and housing demographic characteristics, whereas the census gives you basic demographics. The ACS produces population and housing characteristics, whereas the census produces population and housing totals. With the ACS, we get new data every year, twice a year. And then with the census, of course, we get new data every 10 years. And the ACS reflect a period of time, either 1 year or 5 years. And the census reflect a point in time, April 1st, 2020. This shows you the American Community Survey data topics that you can get data for. So they're broken down by demographic, social, housing, and economic characteristics. So for example, if you wanted data on how many veterans there are in Cincinnati, or what languages do people speak at home, or any kind of housing characteristics, such as what's the average mortgage? How many owners are there? How many renters are there? How old are the homes? Or economic characteristics, such as, what's the median household income? What occupations do people work in? What industries do they work in? What's poverty like in Hamilton County? How did they get to work? Now, as I told you before, the ACS comes out in 1 year and 5 year estimates each year. 1 year is for 12 months of collected data, and the 5 years are for 60 months of collected data. With the 1 year, we get statistics for population with 65,000 or more. And so the 5 year are for all geographic areas down to the block group level. So to use the 1 year, you have to have a population of 65,000 or more. The 5 year are basically for all populations. The 1 year is less reliable, and the 5 year is more reliable because there's more data going into the 5 year. So if you were looking at like a Hamilton County, you would have your choice to either use the 1 year or the 5 year. And you could say, do I want to be more reliable using the 5 year, or do I be more current using the 1 year? And the 1 year is best used when current data are more important or for analyzing large populations. The 5 year are best used when precise data are more important or for analyzing small populations. This is our geography hierarchy. If you look, it goes from the nation all the way down to the census block. If you think of a block in your neighborhood, that's kind of indicative of a census block. And basically at the census block level, you're only going to get decennial census data. If you put some of those blocks together, like 3 or 4, you'll get a block group. A block group and up is where you can get American Community Survey estimates. So if you put some block groups together, like 3 or 4 block groups, you get a census tract. A census tract has an optimum of about 4,000 population. So you can easily get any of those data topics that I showed you from the American Community Survey, for instance, for all zip codes in the United States, or for all census tracts in Hamilton County. Now I'd like to show you some of the data from the ACS, and broken down by, in this case, first the demographic and social characteristics. Here we have age groups. This is for Cincinnati, the population by age groups from 2010 and most recent ACS in 2021. 2010 is in the blue and 2021 is in the red. You can see from this graph, there's not too much that jumps out, but you could see in the younger, the 10 to basically 24, you can see the 2010, I mean, the 15 to 24, the 2010 was much higher than the 2021. And then the 21 takes over when we get to 25, basically out to 44. And what's notable here is if you look at the older ages, again, we see the 2021 taking over the 60 all the way out to the 84. You see the 2021 being greater in the age groups. And on the bottom, I have the median age for Ohio, Hamilton, Cincinnati, and the metro area. And I'm showing the median age from 2010 to 2021. You can see the median age in Ohio has increased by 0.7 years. And that was statistically different. Hamilton County increased by decreased by minus 0.2. And that was not statistically different. And Cincinnati as well stayed the same in median age from 2010 to 2021. And the metro area increased by 1 year in median age from 2010 to 2021. And it was statistically different between those 2 years. And you could see too that from here, Ohio is the highest median age and Cincinnati has the lowest median age. Here's the percent of the population with a bachelor's degree or higher from 2010 and 2021. 2010 is in the blue. So if you look at Ohio, there's roughly a 6% difference between 2010 and 2021. They're at 30% in 2021 with a bachelor's degree or higher. Hamilton County is much higher at 41.3% with a bachelor's degree, and they increased roughly 8% over 2010. Cincinnati, we saw a bigger increase, the highest increase. We saw it go from 31 to 41, a 10% increase basically in bachelor's degree or higher. And the Cincinnati metro area increased by roughly 6-7 percentage points from 2010 to 2020. Here we have the percent. I looked at disability, the percent of the population with a disability for Ohio, Hamilton, Cincinnati, and Cincinnati Metro. You can see that Ohio had an increase of basically 1%, 13.3 to 14.2 in 2021. Hamilton, same difference, a little bit lower, but it went from 11.9% with a disability to 12.9% of its population with a disability. And we saw a slight gain in Cincinnati, went from 13.7 disability to 14. And then the metro area increased basically the most from 11.9 to 13.1% with a disability. And then I thought, let's look at the different types of disability within each place. And in red is the disability type with the highest percentage in each type. So for instance, Ohio has the highest hearing difficulty at 3.8%. Ohio also has the highest vision difficulty of its population with 2.4%. And Cincinnati actually has the highest cognitive disability at 7.4% of its population, of the disability, I'm sorry. And then Ohio has the highest ambulatory difficulty at 7.2. Cincinnati has the highest self-care disability at 2.7. and Ohio has the highest independent living difficulty at 6.0%. Here we're looking at migration for Hamilton County, Ohio from 2010 to 2021. In the blue, you have in-migrants. Those are people that are moving into Hamilton County from outside. In the red, you have the out-migrants. Those are people that are leaving Hamilton County to move elsewhere. So you can see it started out that the out-migrants were higher than the in-migrants. So we had about 35,000 or so, almost 35,000 in-migrants, and you had roughly like 5,000 out-migrants. And so then they kind of went up and down between the years. And then we go out to the end here, and you can see in 2020, the out-migrants again surpassed the in-migrants. So currently the in-migrants are about 35,000 and the out-migrants are at roughly 41,500. And then I looked at the in and out migrants in 2021, looked at their race and their age, and there was a slight difference between, for instance, the white population had slightly more out migrants. The Black population had almost the same between in and out migrants. There was a big difference between the American Indian and Alaskan Native, way more out migrants at 19.4%. But my guess is there probably wasn't that many to start with. We see more Asian population coming in at 9% as opposed to leaving at 5.6%. It's some other race is pretty close, 3.2 and 4.4. Hispanic, slightly more out migrants in the Hispanic population at 5.6%. And if you look at the median age, you see that the out migrants are roughly 4 years older than the in migrants. So we see at 28.5, we have more out migrants. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about economic characteristics. Here's the unemployment rates from 2010 to 2021 for Ohio, Hamilton, Cincinnati, and the Cincinnati Metro. Really, the only thing that's noteworthy from here is you could see that Cincinnati unemployment rate has always been higher than, in the green here, it's always been higher than the unemployment rates for the other three areas. And if you look, it's gotten a little bit closer than it was in 2010, but it's still, the Cincinnati unemployment rate is roughly almost 8%, whereas the Metro, Hamilton County, and Ohio are all roughly almost like a little over 5%. Here we have median household income in 2010 and 2021 for the four areas. And I show the difference between 2010 and 2021. For instance, you can see Ohio increased $17,172 from 2010. There was an increase in Hamilton of basically the same amount of $17,829. Cincinnati, we saw an increase of $8,623. And we saw the biggest increase in median household income in the metro area of $19,246. And one thing from here, I noted that Cincinnati had the lowest median household income, and also it had the less than half, almost about half of the increase, the difference of the increase from 2010 to 2021, increasing only 8,600. Now with poverty, here we're at poverty for Ohio, Hamilton, Cincinnati, and the metro area. These are the percent of the population in poverty. And all these areas went down in poverty. And you note that from here, you can see that the highest poverty rate right now is in Cincinnati at 27.3. It's, you know, basically double, almost double besides Hamilton of these places. And it actually did have the biggest decrease at 3.3% from 2010. Here we have the business establishments for Hamilton County, Ohio from 2010 to 2020. And these are by employment class size. And what you can see from here is if you look at the red where they actually were negative, it was a decrease. You can see that these businesses, the second one, third one, fourth one, they were smaller employees, the 1 to 4, the 5 to 9, the 10 to 19 businesses. They're the ones that decreased. The most being the 5 to 9 employees. They lost 394 establishments. Then if you look at one of the biggest increases was a 20 to 49 employees. They gained 194 businesses. And we saw 50 to 499 employee businesses, each increased 40. We saw some increase in the bigger businesses, especially the 1,000 employees or more, they gained 8 from 2010. We saw a loss of one business between 1,000 and 1,499. And then you could look at the rest and see there was a gain in one business that with 5,000 or more employees. Those were businesses with employees. Conversely, this is showing the non-employer establishments. These are sole proprietor businesses in Hamilton County from 2010 to 2019. That's the latest date we had data. So you can see these businesses with no employees, they were 53,638 in 2010. And they've been slowly increasing with a little bit of a decrease in 2013, all the way up to 62,412. And I have down there that the 62,412 businesses that are currently non-employee businesses, these sole proprietorship businesses in Hamilton, they account for over $2.9 billion in revenue. And I wanted to look at this. This is the means of transportation to work. Just because I wanted, one thing I wanted to see was are we showing an impact of COVID at all in this? What I'm doing is I'm looking at Hamilton County and Cincinnati in 2010 and 2021, and I'm showing the difference. So for instance, you can see car, truck, or van means of transportation to work was down 13% in both Cincinnati and Hamilton. And then you could see public transportation was down a little more so in Cincinnati at 3.8%. And then you look at walk, it's down slightly. And bicycle there's not many to begin with, is down. But where we see increases, we actually saw a slight increase in taxi, motorcycle, and other means. But we see these increases in work from home. So look how Hamilton County jumped from 3.8% to 19.2%. And Cincinnati jumped 3.9 to 20.5% working from home. So you see these bigger increases due to the decreases in the car, the truck, the van, the public transportation. All we're seeing in the red, more people are working from home. Here we have a worker inflow outflow report. And what this is showing is, this is for Hamilton County. So what this shows is there's 233,624 people. They come from outside of Hamilton County to work in Hamilton County. So these are non-residents of Hamilton. They're coming in to work. So then we have 213,437 people in the middle here. These are residents of Hamilton that work in Hamilton. Then you have 116,494 people that are residents of Hamilton, but they go to work outside of Hamilton. So what I've done here is I looked at this 233,624 people that come from outside Hamilton to work in Hamilton, and I put the top 10 counties of where they live. So as you can see here, 21% of that 233,000 people, they live in Butler County. They're leaving Butler to come work in Hamilton, followed by 37,000 in Claremont, 27,000 in Warren County. And you can see that even some people from Franklin County, Ohio, 9,000 people are coming in to work in Hamilton, all the way down to Brown County, Ohio at 4,000. Conversely, now these people that are leaving, these residents of Hamilton, they're going to work in Butler County. So you got 29,000. So you've got a lot of people coming in to work that live in Butler. They're coming to work in Hamilton, but you also got people leaving Hamilton to go to work in Butler. And you could look at, for instance, Franklin County, Ohio. Again, some of these people are leaving, namely 8,129 to go to work in Franklin County. All the way down in, here's one that was kind of a surprise. In Cuyahoga County, you've got 3,426 leaving Hamilton County to go to work in Cuyahoga County. And this is from on the map. It's a tool that the Census Bureau has. You can also look down all the way down to the census tract level if you wanted to see, where they work and where they live. Now, just finally, some housing characteristics. Here we have total housing units. And on the top, I got this from the 2020 census, or 2010 and 2020 census. For total housing units, you can see Ohio increased by 115,016 housing units. Hamilton County increased by 1,600, just over 1,600 housing units. In Cincinnati, we saw a decrease of 2,322 housing units. And then the metro area, we saw an increase of 47,000 housing units. And then I thought, let's look at the owner-occupied housing units as opposed to the renter-occupied. So the owner-occupied housing units, you can see that Ohio, the percentage, first off, you can see the percentage of owner-occupied housing units is very low as compared to Ohio, Hamilton, and Cincinnati Metro. Cincinnati only has 38.2%.
Recording in progress.
What's that? Cincinnati only has 38.2% of its housing units be owner occupied. And you saw that it decreased actually by 4.2% from 2010. So it was a very low, a little over a third of Cincinnati's housing units are owner occupied. So then what I've done is I wanted to look at the units and structure for Cincinnati, Ohio, and maybe that would tell me, maybe what's going on. So you can see, as I said, the total housing units, and this is from ACS, so the total housing units has decreased. And most of that was due to the decrease in the 1 unit attached. You can see they decreased by 22.9%. And then we see decreases in the 2 units, 3 and 4, all the way down to 10 and 19. But if you look, these 20 or more units, they increased by 58.7%. So they're building more multi-unit structures. And of course, most of those will probably be rental units, or they built more. So most of those are rental units. And so that's why, you know, the rental is going up. Home ownership rate is going down. And then we have a mobile homes, they increased by 78.6%. And then we don't have any more boat, RVs, and vans. They decreased by 45, which was what they were in 2010. Now here we have median home values for Ohio, Hamilton, Cincinnati, and the metro from 2010 to 2021. And of note here, as you can see that the lowest median home value was 180,000 in Ohio. You could see Ohio increased by 45,800 from 2010. Hamilton had a 49,600 increase, and Cincinnati, which was the lowest in 2010, increased by 59,000, and the metro area, which is the highest at 217, increased by 62,200. And this is average household size for owner-occupied units from 2010 to 2021. And this is like, if you look at all the different places in Ohio, you see that in most cases, household size is going down. You know, gone are the days with 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 kids. So you see household size decreasing. So you look at Ohio, the household size went down by 0.06, and that was significant. Hamilton County was 0.08 decrease. Cincinnati was 0.06, and then the metro was 0.09. So the metro went down the furthest, and Cincinnati had the lowest of the 4 average household size at 2.3. So basically there was no difference between these 2.36 and 2.30, but the other ones they're statistically different. Finally, we don't have the this is urban areas. We don't have the 2020 decennial census data for urban rural at the moment. But what I've done here was I made a map of the 2010 urban areas for the Cincinnati metro area and the 2020 urban areas of the Cincinnati metro area. And what you can see is, first off, you can look at the urban area, which is included in 2010. It's included everything in green. And it includes this part of Indiana here. But in 2020, it doesn't. This is what's in this, whatever color you want to call this. It's brownish. It's not included in the 2020 urban area for Cincinnati metro. So it got rid of that area. You can also see up top, it includes a lot of up here, whereas the 2020 urban area for Cincinnati metro does not include, it looks like it's Middletown. That's a separate urban area. And also you could see some of the difference between, you know, down by Claremont, how it's the 2010 is going further out and it's not as much as out here. I think that's, I just wanted to mention that, and we talked a little bit about this at the beginning, but you can request a free data training for your organization by going to census.gov/academy. You can receive our data gems. Those are short how-to videos. They're quick and easy way. So people don't know how to find data. There's any number of data gems on our website on census.gov that show how to do things. They're short 2-3 minute videos. You can get access to our courses. You can learn at your own pace. These are videos, tutorials, short webinars that you can learn at your own pace. And then you can interact with our instructors via live webinars. You can learn about our data releases and while attending these live virtual classes. And thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Tim, Clara just asked a question to one of your last slides about the urban areas.
Yeah.
Claire, you want to unmute and just ask it in person?
Sure, thanks. Are the changes due to the fact that you mentioned, I think Middletown, that certain areas grow so much so that they get their own defined area, but or like why is part of Indiana not with us anymore? Do you know?
I don't know offhand. It just has to do with the population. It's it could be either due to growth or either lack of growth. I know that's why I tried. Some of my slides weren't. I didn't get into it, but some of my slides didn't have the metro area on it early on because I know that one of those counties, I think it was Indiana, was in the metro area for 2010 up until basically 2020. But after the 2020 census, there's no more. That county was left out of the metro area, so they delineate these metro areas every so often, and especially after the 2020 census. And it's due to a population. And plus what's going on there too is it's kind of complicated. It's not a Census Bureau thing. It's more of an Office of Management budget. And what they do is they have like, and this is just me, just remembering it, but they take, they have like a core county, let's say Hamilton, and they establish these outlying counties, and how many people actually work or travel into that core county, travel into work. They take that into account, and that's how they come up with these metro areas. So every so often, I imagine after every census, they'll look at like how many people are coming in from these Indiana counties to work in Hamilton. How many people are coming from the Warren County to work in Hamilton, and then they adjust the metro area as that's where they make adjustments to the metro area,
which makes it hard to compare from year to year.
Yeah. I mean, you can compare to year to most of the times you can compare to year. But now, and this kind of thing where I'm doing the 2010 to 2020, it's a little misleading because I want to say it's Brown County, India. I'm not sure, but as I recall, I thought, wow, okay, there's a county missed. They dropped one of the counties.
Thank you. Mary Kate, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I had two questions actually, if that's okay. I was wondering who was selected for the American, I wrote ACS and I can't remember what the C is now, community survey, and how are they selected? And then that's one question, that's two. And I was also curious about how the block groups are determined and if they are always like the same group of census tract.
Well,
census
determining
block.
wise, the American Community Survey, it's a random survey, and they use what's called a master address file, and the Census Bureau, after every census for, you know, the past so many years, long time, after every census, they update the master address file. And the master address file also gets, I think it's twice a year, they get every address the post office, they give us all the addresses the post office delivers to too. So everything is, and plus we have our own address listers that are listing addresses continuously. And that's always, that goes in the construction of the master address file that's been around forever. So what they do is they take the master address file and they sample randomly from the master address file. And so, you know, you can look at the ACS sample and it's like throwing darts at a dartboard. It's just all over the place. So it's randomly sampled.
And the survey, it's mailed?
It is,
then?
Yes, yeah, it's mailed. It was, you could do it online now, and it is mailed. Okay. And they do come to your house.
Okay.
I believe and it used to have, I mean, pre-COVID, it had a high response rate, a very high, you know, we do 100 different surveys at least. And that was one of our highest response rate surveys because, you know, it was mailed. You could do it on the internet. And if you don't do it, eventually there's a chance that someone's going to come to your house and do it in person. So, you know, that's why it had a pretty high response rate. And then what was the second part of yours was
how are the block groups, like how are the census tracts, I guess, determined, and are they always the same?
No, the census tracts, I mean, the block groups would change, and it's easier to go with it because there's so many block groups per census tract. And census tracts, they change in response to the population. So basically, you know, it's already happened. You know, people are wanting data. They're calling me and say, hey, Tim, you know, I want data from 2010 and 2020 or 2021. And, you know, something's going wrong with this census tract. And I said, well, you know, after every census, they're going to look at these census tracts and they're going to adjust them according to where the population has moved. So, you know, they have an optimum of 4,000 population. So if a tract gets a lot of population, they might break the tract into 2 separate tracts, different things like that. So that's why people, they're doing research and they want tracts over 30, 40, 50 years. And I tell them, you know, you probably don't want to do that just because during that amount of time, census tracts will, for most of those, or some of them will for surely change. And so, you know, a tract change.
So there's
the block
geographic, but then it kind of morphs based on the population change over time.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. They correspond to population.
Okay, thank you.
Tim, I had a question. Could you possibly on the slides go back close to the beginning where you had the percentages? You had a Hispanic percentage change. I think you had all the racial groups and then, thank you. Very good. The question I have, and I guess it's more of a comment than a question. I mean, the huge increase in Hispanic or Latino population, people have been quoting that, but my understanding is that our area is still very, very, very much lower in population than in Hispanic population than the rest of the country. And that it's really misleading when folks say, oh, we've had a 75% increase as though there were huge numbers of people. I guess my comment is how misleading sometimes just quoting percentage changes are when you don't have context or that comparison. Yeah,
that's true. I mean, that looks like there's about 16,000 more Hispanics in Hamilton County, an increase over 2010. But again, I'd have to look at that just to see, because I know, like I said about some other race, in the 2 or more races, the Census Bureau made it easier for people to self-identify in the 2020 census. So, you know, don't quote me, but you know, maybe that had some effect on Hispanic Latino. I'd have to do more research or check to see if that was the case. But yeah,
I guess it's the people's perception of who their community is and who's coming in can be really different if you use percentages versus, larger context comparisons.
Well, usually I show this, I'll show the difference of 16,000, then I'll say it's 75%, but I didn't in this case, it got too big, but that's right.
Okay, are there other questions for Tim or other reactions? Claire, do you want to have another one?
Yeah, thank you. Tim, I really appreciate this. It caught my ear at the very beginning. You said this is something like 100% complete data from 2020. And I just remember at the end of the census season, like late summer or fall, there were very much concerns about COVID and some other like federal interruptions. But now that you guys have had time to look at this, you feel confident in the numbers represented?
I'm not a census expert as per se, because I haven't worked on the census, but I'm more of a data dissemination specialist that deals with the data from the census.
The output. Okay. All right.
We did different programs, and we determined, I don't know if we determined the undercount or anything like that yet. I'm not sure, but it came out, as good as we thought.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Mary Kate, do you want to make that comment live?
Sure. And I'm operating off of my memory too, but kind of piggybacking off of what Elizabeth said, I was surprised to see proportion or the percentage of Hispanic people grew so much, but then the in migration of that group didn't seem to wasn't very high in my memory. And so that was really interesting to me. So it does, I guess, to me, seems to imply what you were saying, that it could have to do with the self identification part as well. Because it was like, with that amount of increase, I can't imagine. I mean, they can have a lot of, that group could have a lot of kids, but that seems like an awful lot. So
and what you're looking at too is this in migration. This is ACS, and so the other was census, and so they're going to differ because one's a survey and one's a complete count.
Okay,
makes sense.
All right, we're at 7 o'clock, and we had intended for this to be about an hour presentation. Does anyone else have questions for Tim? Tim, can you put up your contact information again? I think you had that.
Yeah, I don't really have, I didn't have it at the end. I don't think, no, it's not in there, is it? No, I mean, I don't have it here. This is just that if you ask data, that's for if you would have any questions about the data. Those are people standing by to answer if you have any questions about the data. It's not on here, but it's timothy.a.sarko, S-A-R-K-O, @census.gov.
Can you just type that into chat for us as we're closing out?
Sure.
Okay, that's great. And thank you very, very much. This was really interesting. We are going to have it up on the YouTube channel for the League of Women Voters of the Cincinnati area. There'll be links to it from our website and probably our Facebook page. So people can go back and check some of those slides or some of that information if they'd like, or you can tell other folks about it. We really do appreciate everyone attending tonight. And if there's nothing else, we will close it out and let folks get back to their evening. So I will say good night. And Mary Kate is our president. Do you have any closing words, Mary Kate?
No, thank you all for coming, and thank you, Tim. I think this was a great presentation, and I know we will all keep it in mind for the work we do and just in general too. So thanks again. And thanks everyone for attending.